I'm outside Westminster Kingsway College. I'm about to go in and meet Jose Souto for one of his game lectures and seminars.
So, now we've got the carcass to this point, now we start breaking it down. Now it's quite quick. Because once we've got it to this point, a lot of people basically really squeamish about seeing the animal basically with its fur on. And then when we get to this point, breaking it down, it's all very quick as it happens to basically be broken down. I'm going to break this down as quickly as possible, and I'm going to work out the costs of it as quickly as possible. So as I'm breaking down the costs, if you guys write it down, just to show. So, first thing I'm going to take off is the shoulders. And the same as the rabbit, right, the shoulders are free floating. Like there is no bone that's holding the shoulder on. Okay, a lot of damage on the inside, a bit of blood there, and blood stain on that. So that's one shoulder. Yeah. And then we'll take the other shoulder. And like I said, there are hundreds of different ways of basically breaking down the carcass. What you've got to look at is basically how you're going to use the carcass and what the utilisation is, because that's what dictates as to how you're going to break down the carcass and how best to use it. If I was using this animal for best ends, to make it cutting cutlets and that, I probably wouldn't cut the shoulders off like this. I'd cut the shoulders basically, I'd cut across here, there, and I'd leave all that because this is the best end where I'd get all my cutlets from. So it's a different way of cutting it. So the shoulders, we look at the shoulders. The shoulders basically have individual muscles on each shoulder, and you've got white sinew that encompasses that muscle. That means that this piece of meat is very tough. Yeah, it's a piece of meat that works all the time. Yeah, so therefore it's got lots of flavour, very long strands of meat. So it's great for cooking, for pulling, yeah, for slow cooking, stuff like that. Which then you can pull it apart. The gelatin within the actual meat keeps it nice and moist. Because it keeps it nice and moist, it means that the meat's tender after it's been cooked, after it's been slow cooked. But it needs long, slow cooking. This is not something that you can roast. Yeah, it's a very long, slow cooking. So, for us, in our scheme of working things out, what we're going to do is we're going to say to these are probably around about, I would say 2 kilos each. Yeah. So we're going to have 4 kilos of meat that's going to come off of those. Yeah. Now the easiest way to work this out, to basically cost-wise, to give you an idea, is to say those 4 kilos will mince it, right? So that gives us 4 kilos of mince from the shoulders. Yeah. Next, we're going to take off the neck. And the neck, you can see we've got quite a bit of trauma here. Basically, and we've got here where the bullet's gone through. You can see how the bullet has completely destroyed the backbone. Yeah, absolutely destroyed the backbone as it's gone through.
Does that cause problems because of shattering the bone?
It could cause problems because, yeah, with bone shatter, yeah, in there. You know, for us, basically using it, yeah, we'd probably stay away from all of that bit because of that, because of the amount of damage that's there. We'll probably use either side of it, yeah.
So is it better to go for the head?
Well, the problem is that you've got people that basically pick up a gun once in a blue moon, and to ask them to basically shoot in the head, you're going to end up with an animal basically without a jaw or something, yeah? So here you can see where all the damage has gone and basically how it's destroyed there. It's a great shot, yeah, but what we do is we just basically take that off there and use this bit here, yeah? So again, it's the same sort of meat as the shoulder, yeah, it's long, elongated muscle, great for pudding, great for things. We can mince it again. Out of that we'll probably get about another kilo, yeah, of mince. Yeah, because we're going to take out that bit that we've got the damage. Now we're going into the breast. So the breast, again, if I was doing cutlets, I'd probably cut further, wider along the breast to allow more of a bone in the cutlet. I'm not. I'm going to take cannons off of this, right? The simplest way possible. So I'm going to cut along here, cut along this little flank that I was in risk of losing. Yeah, cut along the back here as close as I can to the carcass, all the way down, and I'll do the same on the other side. Yeah, cut around the flank, and again I'm going to cut very close, like that. I'm going to take I'm not too bothered if it's a straight line or not, because it doesn't matter to me. Yeah, because I'm going to take this off and take the cannons off the bone. So that's one breast. You take the other breast off. If I was at the game dealers, I'd have the saw, which cuts it a lot tinier than the way I'm cutting it. So breast, for me, it's one of my favourite cuts. And one of the reasons for it is because this piece of meat, it has, see that one, stop it swinging. So the breast, what it has is it basically has sheaths of meat. Right? These sheaths of meat, basically you have a layer on top of another layer, on top of another layer. So what it does is basically 3 or 4 layers on top of each other. Now for me, one of the nicest ways to cook this is to basically do what's called an epigram, which is where we take the breast, take the bones out of the breast, cook the breast as a piece, like a pork belly. Yeah, you cook it as a slow cook it, and then you can press it, yeah? Once it's cold, then you cut it into little squares, and like a pork belly, you can then basically cook those back in the oven, or with this, one of the nicest ways to do it, because they're quite small, is to put mustard on the outside of them, flour in and breadcrumbs, then deep fry them. Yeah, and you end up with like a little sandwich that basically beats the meat with it. It's delicious. The way to get the bones out, to make it even better, rather than sheath bone it, which is to run along the bottom here and just take the whole thing out and lose all of what they call the intercostular meat, the meat between each of the bones, is to run your knife down like that, along it, and then you peel the meat back, or the skin back, away from the bone, so the bone is protruding out the top. Right, just so you've got the tip of the bone, see the tip of the bone protruding out the top? Then curl your finger around it, and then pull down, and pull the bone out. Yeah, you can do that with pork bellies as well. Right, and you keep all of the meat in between the costlers, so that you've got a bigger piece of meat. Because as soon as you start taking it out, it's an old trick from basically when you're doing things like streaky bacon, because if you take the intercostular out, the streaky bacon, the pork belly is very thin. So to make it thicker, you do it this way. Right, so you take all those out. Now then, with that, right, and that, we've got probably about another 3 kilos of meat, which we can basically use for mince. That's another 3 kilos of mince.
Yeah.
Now, next thing I'm going to take out, I'm going to take out the fillets, the true fillets, right? I am sick and tired of chefs calling these the fillets. They're not the fillets, they're the loins, right? And if it's got the sinew taken off the outside and you've got the loin like that, it looks like a fillet, it's still not a fillet. It's an eye of the loin, okay? Or a cannon, yeah? These are the fillets, right? They all come, I mean, all animals have them on the same place. The inside, here, yeah? Run the knife on the inside. Take that out. And we take them out now because when we cut the loin, the long loin out, we'll probably end up cutting through the middle of them. That's one, and the other one which runs along the other side. Now fallow have quite largish sort of fillets. Red deer have much bigger fillets. And if we're going to do things like carpaccios, tartars, anything like that, this is the piece of meat that you use. Right? There's a fillet. This is the chain, which basically sits on the outside of the fillet, which you take off. Yeah, and then you end up with that. That's the fillet, that's all. Because it's not sometimes known as a pencil fillet. This is a very, if you take a piece of meat off of this and you put it into your fingers, you will notice that basically it goes to a paste very easy because there's hardly any structure to it. It's the most tenderest part of the whole of the animal. So because of that, these are highly prized. And normally, basically, if we do the fillet of beef, obviously you do tournedos, do steaks out of it. You can't do steaks out of this one. This is a fairly small one. Tartar, yes. If you're going to eat raw meat, yeah, you eat the tenderest raw meat on the carcass. And this is the tenderest raw meat on the carcass. Carpaccio is very difficult because it's very small to cut carpaccios. Maybe for canapes, you could use that for carpaccios. But for carpaccios, for me, and it's the only time I'll ever do it, is the loins out of a roe deer. because the loins out of roe deer are perfectly beautifully round and they're very, very tender. Yeah, I wouldn't use the loins out of a fallow, maybe a young fallow, but I tend not to use a fallow because it can be a little bit tougher. But the loins out of a roe deer are perfect for making perfect carpaccios. Yeah? And when we say carpaccios, what we do with them is we take the loin, we sear it in very, very hot oil, season it, and then let them cool down, and then we completely cover them in Dijon mustard, and then roll them either in fine herbs or in black pepper. Yeah, roll them up in cling film, tie the ends off, so basically like a big sausage. Put them in the freezer, let them freeze. Yeah, and then what I do is I take them out about sort of like an hour before, let them soften up a little bit, and then I like to cut mine about 5 mil thick. I hate it when people cut them paper thin, because you pick them up off the plate and you can't get them off the plate because they're that thin. There's nothing to it. You know, I want a bit of taste, I want a bit of texture to it. So I cut them about sort of 4 to 5 mil thick, lay them on the plate while they're still frozen, so it gives you can move them around right, and by the time they'll defrost in seconds, and they look beautiful on the plate when you cut them like that. Yeah. And we serve it with a caramelised walnuts or caramelised pecan nuts, yeah, which we put onto them, yeah, and some a balsamic dressing with a little salad. The bit that comes off of here, this, which is called the chain. In the UK, we really don't have any use for it. But if you go across to Spain, Italy, and France, in pork, this little thing here, they call a lagarto. Lagarto in Spanish means the lizard, and it's still lizard because a lizard sits on top of a stone in the sun, and this sits on top of the fillet. And what they would use in Iberico pork and pork, what they do with these is they marinate them, and then they do what's in the north of Spain is the northern version of tapas, which is a pincho, which is basically they thread it onto a stick, yeah, and they grill them, yeah, and that's a pincho. So that's what they use these for, and you can use these exactly the same way. Fillets. So now we're going to take off the long saddle. So here, where the hips are, here, just find the hip bone there, just at the same place as we are hip bone. Just put the knife onto where the hip bone is, just there, yeah, and cut across. And then here, we find the same place with the same hip bone, yeah, and we cut across. Yeah. Join the two cuts, yeah, and then we can put saw in. And that gives us our long saddle. Now, there's a long saddle and a true saddle. This is known as the long saddle because it contains what would have been the neck, which is also known as the scrag, yeah. The middle neck, yeah, which is basically where you get your, if you're doing Irish stew and lamb, this is where you get your bascots, the tiny little cutlets with a little bone in them, yeah. Sometimes those are uncovered cutlets because you've uncovered them. This bit here, where you've got 8 bones, which would be your rack, you've got half a rack, or the best end is a full piece, yeah. And then this bit here, where the flat bones are, would be the true saddle, okay. All of it is known as the long saddle, yeah, that's one piece. And with because I've cut it so short, obviously I haven't got a lot of bone on my to cut cutlets out. So what I'm going to do with these, I'm going to take them out and I'm going to cut them as a cannon. So we start from the top, we work down one side on the bone, all the way down. And then here at the back, once you go down the bone goes down, and then there's a little lip here which you need to go over, and then you get on the flat of the bone. So I'm going down there, hitting that bone, going over that little lip, and then I'm running the knife flat on the flat bones of the true saddle, which is at the back. Yeah, and as I go up, heading towards the best end, all of a sudden I hit the best end and I'm onto the curved bones of the best end. Yeah, and the knife then starts to curve around the bones as opposed to basically coming out flat. So just go work it up here and I'll turn it around in a second, I'll show you how it looks. So if you look at that, that's how it goes there, and that's how it's coming off. Yeah, see the curved bones at the best end. This, as a piece, is the best end, yeah? Cut it in half to rack. There is no such thing on the menu as a best end on a menu, because it means that you would be given them this piece in the middle with the backbones intact. there's such a thing as a rack. And again, this is where chef's terminology basically sometimes gets the better of it, because they'll put best end of lamb on the menu. There's no such thing as a best end of lamb on the menu. You have to cut the middle out and give them a great big thing on the plate. Yeah. So that's it clean. Yeah, see that? Let's see all of that off that side. Now here we've got on this piece here, we're going to take the outer skin off. Yeah, so we start by just removing the outer skin. And you should be able just to push it off quite up to the head. And then the bottom here, you have to loosen it a little bit. Pull that off. Taking that outer sinew off. Yeah, so we've got that. A little bit of trim. Now here, at the top here, you can see that there is a muscle that sits here, and this sinew sits on top, and it goes underneath the muscle. So that sinew, that little piece of meat needs to be removed. You do that by basically just doing a knife and running your knife across it, because as you run it across, you'll see that you're shaving that piece of meat off of the sinew. Yeah. So again, this is where this knife is really good, because of the way it's curved. Yeah. So pull that out. Right, and separate that, and then you'll see that the neck end is tapered. Any meat that's off of that we use as mince. Yeah. And you see that's your loin. Yeah. Basically, it's tapered to the neck. Now I've got to take this sinew off the outside, because if we cook this, it'll just curl up. So what we do is lay it flat. This is where we use a filleting knife. What we do, can you see that, Lauren? Alright. So we get underneath there, and we just, like as if we were skinning a fish. Across, you see, comes off nice and clean, right? And then all of that sinew comes off. Now the sinew that comes off of this piece of meat, off of all these pieces of meat, we don't throw any of the sinew away. What I like to do is I like to put it into stocks, because if we put it into stocks, obviously the gelatin in the sinew will break down, and it's just going to thicken the stock into a jus. Yeah, when you're working with it. So here now, any little bits of white sinew that we have off there, we just take off. Any little bits like that, we also just take off. Just to make sure that we end up with a nice, clean piece of meat. Yeah, we don't want any sinew that's going to make it tough. Yeah, for anybody. So there we go. So that's it there. So that's the way it would come off of there. There you go, like that. So a nice bit of low food. So at the moment now, we've got basically out of the two that we're going to have, we're going to have another kilo of mince. Yeah. We're going to have from the fillets. Yeah, we'll have portions out of the fillets. So let's say if we do portions of tartare, we'll have 6 portions of tartare out of the fillets. Yeah. Now we're going to go on to the haunches. Now the haunches basically, obviously, is the one, the piece of the joint of venison that everybody recognises. Part of the loin. It's the one that basically has got where all the steaks come from. We don't cut steaks from the loin. Yeah, even though you will see people describe some of the loin pieces as venison sirloin steaks. There's no such thing as a venison sirloin steaks. The only reason you got a sirloin steak is because Henry VIII, yeah, he knighted a loin of beef. And because he knighted a loin of beef, yeah, it became known as a sirloin. Yeah, there is no such thing as a loin of venison, a sirloin of venison. Everything else is a loin. Yeah, pork loin, lamb loin, venison loin. Yeah, when it comes to beef, sirloin, but nothing else. Yeah, even though supermarkets might want to tell you that. So we're just going to take this skin off here, or the socks. Do that. divide the two haunches in half. In Scotland, they split the base of the pelvis. In the UK, we don't. But because these have been, they've all been sponsored by Highland Game, and because they've been sponsored by Highland Game, they do it to the Scottish specification, which is to split the pelvis. So there's one haunch, put that over there. And this one we're going to take it apart. So to show you how to do a roast haunch. So first we take the pelvic bone out, which is part of the pelvic bone now that we've cut it off, is known as the H bone. Yeah. We remove that pelvic, going round, go into the ball and socket joint, cut through the little tendon that holds the ball and socket joint together. So there's like a socket and a ball, and there's a little tendon that holds together. Open it out. Then you get behind it and cut around, yeah, and around the back, right underneath. Take that out. That's pelvic. So that would be the back of the animal, and that would be the leg on this side. Okay. Don't throw the bones away. Bones are really great for stock. Use stock. Right, so now we've done that. We're going to clean the leg up, the leg. So we take out the Achilles tendon right at the bottom, cut round, here the leg, just clean it a little bit, and then bring that off. Clean out, normally I try to clean out any of the marrow bone in there, and the reason we clean out the marrow bone is because if we're using this as a haunch on a presentation table, the marrow bone, once it cooks, will come out and discolour the bone, so the bone will go all grey. There's nothing wrong with the marrow bone, it just discolours it. So because it discolours it, you take it out, when you cook it you end up with a nice white bone at the end, so the presentation looks nice. So that is our classic haunch of venison as a roast. That's how we prepare a haunch of venison. But for in the kitchen, the best thing in the kitchen is to be able to take this and put it into portions. So in portions, to do that, what we first do is we take off this bit, which is the rump, 1 centimetre below the joint. We look at this one, which is a D-shaped rump, so it's like a letter D. And this is like a rump of lamb. It's really nice, basically great bit of food. You've got individual muscles on there. It's not quite as tidy as something like a piece of loin or something like that, but it's still a first class cut that we can get from that. And we get 2 portions out of that. That's 2 portions out of the rump. The loin, right, we're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We get 10 portions. We get 20 portions out of the loin. Now we're going to take the shank off. The shank, what you do is you put your knife in, and if your knife only goes that far in, you're in the wrong place because you're trying to get into the joint. So you move up, and then all of a sudden the knife will disappear, and that's where it is. That's where the joint is. So when you find that joint, you go long cut right across the joint, yeah, and then you put the tip of the knife in where that was, wiggle it, yeah, and you'll get into the joint. You'll be able to cut through the joint. And this gives us our shank of venison, yeah, like a shank of lamb. And this is probably for 2 people, yeah, on the shank of lamb. So you've got 2 portions out of the shank, so you can get 4 portions out of the shank, yeah. So that one there, you got 2 portions out of that. That's 4 out of that one, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because you got 2. Yeah, so that's a second class cut. Now here, the muscle's basically in the haunch. So here you've got the white line that runs through the middle of it. So what we do is we cut through that white line. So what we're doing now is we're separating muscles. This is called seam butchery. Yeah, it's done a lot basically in the continent. We don't tend to do as much of it here in the UK. We tend to cut animals down the bone structure as opposed to being the muscle structure. But this works really well with this piece of meat because we're trying to get as many steaks as we can out of it. Yeah, so we'll open it up. This is what we ate today. we're opening it right out and we're going through the seams of the muscle. We're not basically cutting into the muscle. Right until we hit the other side here. And when we hit the other side, then we'll cut that open. Okay, so that's one piece. Next piece, the top of the bone's there. We put the knife in where the top of the bone is, and we run the knife along that bone. And on the back of the bone, yeah, and on the other side, do exactly the same, running along the bone. And then we're pulling this bone out. Just run out like that, knife underneath. Yeah, pull the bone out. Top here, got to be quite aggressive, cut quite high up because there's a bone that sits on top here, which is the kneecap. That sits in there as well. We've got a load of meat that comes off the front of this, which is what goes on top of the shank, which can go in there. Yeah. Bone. Divide these two pieces of meat in half where the bone was. So all you do is just where the bone was, just cut it in half. Alright, and divide it into 3 muscles. So the first muscle, let's have a look at the first muscle. First muscle, we take this elongated muscle off of it. Okay, that elongated muscle is there, and that's known as the salmon cut. Yeah, or sometimes also known as the juice fillet. Now this is basically a piece of meat that to cook it as a long piece like this is really not great because the thing is it basically curls up when you're cooking it. So because it curls up, it's better off for basically doing stir fries or small pieces or even kebabs and stuff like that. It's a first class cut, but it just, if you cook it like that, it just curls up because of the long strands of meat. Here, this is the silver side. Yeah. And what we do again, the filleting knife, we run across the edge of the sinew on that, run your knife all the way down, and then underneath. Yeah, and take the outer sinew off. A bit of mince. And on the other side, do exactly the same. Take the sinew off. Cut that off again for mince. Right, and that gives us this little piece here, which is the silver side, which basically is great for cutting little steaks out of. So for downstairs this week, we've got these little steaks on in the fine dining, so we're doing small little steaks like that. Yeah, tiny little steaks like this, yeah. And we get quite a few portions out of those. These ones we're doing like that, yeah. So that one. Then we've got this larger piece, which has got like a flap of skin on the outside of it, or a flap of meat, which is the thin flank, which we take off, again just separating the muscles. Get that taken off. And that going to mince. So you've probably got another 2 kilos of mince. Yeah. Then you've got, see there's another piece of meat here sitting on the side, and what we do is we take that piece of meat off, and just run our fingers up along it to separate it. And that comes off, and this is known as the bullet because it's shaped like a bullet. Yeah, and this again is a really nice tender piece of meat. The only problem is with it is it has an artery that runs through the middle of it, and because of that artery, you've got to scoop the artery out. So again, it's great for doing things like stir fries and that, the same as you would do with that piece of meat there. This bit here that we've got left is just the top side. And again, the top side of venison is really nice. It's a very tender piece of meat. And again, we use it for steaks. We can cut medallions out of it. Yeah. All those sorts of things basically come out of this one. And if you've got haunch, like today we had the haunch on the menu. This is these muscles are the ones that we were eating out of that haunch. Yeah, and they would be sous vide and pan fried. So there's another piece there, that. And in this last one, we take the outer skin off the outside. and you end up with a round piece of meat. They're sometimes known as the round, sometimes known as the nut. We know as the thick flank. We have the thin flank on the other side, this is the thick flank. You see why it's called the round, because it's so round. Now this has a sinew that runs through the middle of it. And you can see here, you've got one lump of muscle, and it sits on top of another lump of muscle. And again, using this knife, what we can do is we can just run the knife along the muscle to separate the sinew that are underneath. You can see what I'm doing there, separating that muscle. Yeah, and just going under it like that, just putting it away. Effortlessly, it just comes away, really nice. And then get underneath here, take all that sinew off. And again, this can be used for steaks. We also have a steak, a rounded steak that we cut out of these, out of both of them, which are basically what Mike Robinson's always termed as parves. Yeah, which is like basically it's like a pavement. Yeah, it's a thick steak with no sort of thin pieces on the outside of it. Again, I'm just taking the sinew off the outside by just getting underneath it like a fish, just taking that off. And again, we can cut parves out of those, so basically you have nice rounded steaks out of that. And the last one is this little bit here. We round that off. Again, we take all the sinews off the outside. These are the one muscle. Now this is the only place that I would basically leave a little bit of sinew in there, and that's because basically the sinew that's in here is so small, it doesn't basically inconsequential. It doesn't really sort of like upset anybody. And again, I can cut that into little parves and steaks and that. So let's work this out. So we've got from the haunch, yeah, we're going to end up with what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6. There's 3 portions there. If we give 2 per portion, 6. So that's 12. Yeah, so 12 there. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's another 12. So it's 24. And then 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So it's 28 portions of basically parves. Yeah, and that from the haunches. Yeah, 24 basically out of 2. And then 2 rumps. And then this, if we cut it to stir fry, we're going to have about 8 portions of stir fry. Yeah, okay. So now if we start to add prices to everything, just to work this out, to see how much it's going to cost. So you got a calculator, Chef? Yeah, right. So we start off with the mince. So how many kilos of mince did we have? Total. 8 kilos of mince, yeah, that's what we had, yeah? So that was 8 kilos of mince. So 8 kilos divided by 120, 120 grams. What we got?
67 grams.
67, yeah? 67. That gives us 67 burgers, let's say, about 120 grams per burger. Well, how much is a burger in London prices, a venison burger? How much?
8 quid.
No, 8 in London.
60. What?
You're joking about, I would say about 15 quid. 15 quid at least. 15 quid. So 69 times 15. 69 times 15.
1,000.
How much?
1,000.
£1,000. How much did the carcass cost?
107.
£107.
100.
I'm a seller.
107. So that's £1,000 in burgers. So write that down, £1,000 in burgers, right? That's only in burgers. And we haven't even looked at any of the expensive cuts yet, okay? Right, so now let's start looking at the expensive cuts. Yeah, we had 20 portions of loin, didn't we? 20 portions of loin. So out of 20 portions of loin, how much is a loin main course in London?
It's 94 kilo.
30?
94 kilo.
94 kilo, but how much for a main course? 35 quid?
Yeah.
35 quid, right? So basically we've got 20 times 35. Yeah, so it's 700 pounds. Yeah? So £700 for the loin, okay? Parveys on here, yeah? So the shank, the 2 portions out of the shank, so there's 4 portions out of the shank, yeah? 2 sharing platters. Sharing platters are say 40 quid per person, right? So that's 80 quid for the sharing platter for the 2 shanks. Yeah, 80 pounds.
Shank is 80 quid.
80 quid, yeah, for 2 shanks. 40 pounds each, so it'd be a sharing plate, yeah? Parveys, how many parveys did we say? 24?
28.
28 parveys, right? That's between the two, is it? 24, no, actually more than that, because we've got it's 28 here and 28 on the second one, yeah? So it's basically what, 40, 56 parveys. Parveys, main course, London, 25 quid. Yeah, 56, yeah, 25 quid each. 56 pound, 56 times 25.
56 times 25 for 1,400.
£1,400, add that to it. Okay, rump, yeah, 4 portions of rump, 20 quid a portion. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's 80 quid for the rump. Yeah, and then stir fry, right? I'm going to be generous with stir fry. Let's say we get what? We're going to get for 8 portions, yeah, 15 quid each. Yeah, so it's 8 times 15. 120, right, add all that up.
3,370.
3,370. The carcass cost £107. So that's basically the breakdown of the carcass in its most simplest form. Right, I'm not kept anything on the bone. Right, if I was to basically cut cutlets of that, would I be making more or less money? Well, it's more work, so I'd have to charge more money. Yeah, because you've got to remember, every time you put your knife to a carcass, it costs you money to basically have that broken down. Now, with this, these are probably on the bone. These are probably working out around about 15 to 20 pound a kilo. Right, when you take them off the bone like that, they're probably working at about 70, 80 pound a kilo. Yeah, when you put them into portions, right, they're probably a little bit more. So the more work you do to it, right, the more work you do yourself, the more money you can save. But you see how much money we've made on one carcass. Now that's what I would expect to make on a fallow. I'd expect between £2,500 to £3,000. On a roe carcass like that, I'd expect to make anything between £1,500 to £1,800. Yeah, on individual carcass. Just understanding how to do this sort of stuff, which is not difficult what I've done. Yeah, it's a simplest form. I could go into much more technical butchery, yeah, and do things much more difficult, yeah, and do, basically chops out of the back of it. I could do T-bones, I could cut cutlets out of it, I could do all that sort of stuff. But it's more work, and I've got to charge more money for it. Yeah, this is in its simplest form. Okay. Any questions?
So that was an absolutely brilliant day. Jose is incredible chef and demonstrator there. So all the links, everything that he's spoken about, all his contact details, the college, all the sponsors, that'll be in the description below. So I hope you like the video, and I'll see you soon for the next one.